This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support, and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. Now let's get into the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am a fire lieutenant, Madison, Wisconsin, a writer for Fire Rescue One, and for the captain down there, my co-host, who is the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One, Janelle Fasquette. Janelle, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for our interview today.
Well, you have this is like your fire chief, because this used to be your fire chief. Used to be the fire chief for San Diego, where you live. He is also, I'm going to embarrass him here, he is also the IAFC's Career Fire Chief of the Year. He is the current fire chief for Orange County Fire Authority. It's Chief Brian Fennessy. And I'm for those that are not watching this, you need to, because he's got the big trophy there behind him. He's basking in the glory. Chief, tell everyone how big of a liar I am, and thanks for being here, by the way.
Yeah, man, there's no basking in glory. I've got the trophy was it's just crazy, right? The trophy was so large. It was like, are you kidding me? I'm gonna need to buy another airplane ticket to put the thing next to me to get it home. So I opted that they ship it. It's still in the box on the other side of the desk, tucked behind some chairs, because it is just, I don't think it's going up. It's just too over the top, and yeah, too much.
Well, we talked a little back behind the scenes here about the experience, and you're not one for the trophies, and I've known you for almost 10 years. I originally met you in San Diego, but it's the message behind the trophy. You've done some unbelievable things there with Orange County Fire Authority. You did some great things in San Diego, and I do want to ask though, like, what was the big moment for you? Like, they told you the IFC Fire Chief of the Year. I mean, what really kind of went through your head when you got that call?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Aaron, and thank you. You know, you're right. I mean, it was probably one of the more uncomfortable experiences I've had, because, and I'm not just being humble, that, there's so many others out there that are doing amazing things, for the U.S. Fire Service, for their own fire departments. When I got the call, it's funny, when I got the call from the ISC executive director, it was at night. They're back east, so I don't know, it was 8 or something here, so it had to have been very late back there. And I thought he was calling about something else, because I'd been pretty outspoken about an issue that maybe wasn't aligned with their position. So I thought he was calling me to tell me, hey, man, can you be cool or chill with, this, that deal. And so, like an idiot, when he calls, I'm saying, hey, man, listen, that meeting, the point was this, it was still there. He laughed. He said, well, that's not what I'm calling about. Like, oh, maybe I should have not led with that. And I was in disbelief. It's like, you're kidding me. It's like, what? I was really disbelief. And then I got to, well, who nominated me? And it was Mark Niemeyer, who's the fire chief out of Boise, city of Boise, who's a good friend and president of the Western Fire Chiefs Association. I'm like, that son of a bitch, I'm going to get him back for this. And like I said, I don't think it sank in until I got there. I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Maybe that was naive on my part, but man, they sure make a big deal of it back there, which made it even harder, right? I mean, so I don't like a lot of attention that way at all. And so, like I say, the thing will probably stay in the box or go somewhere else. But man, I'm to your point, I'm not a big trophy guy.
Well, we're going to sell people listening to this as to why you are the Fire Chief of the Year. Why you're the
you
Career
need to
Fire
sell
Chief
it to him too.
Well,
yeah,
I
go, yeah, there are others out there doing things too.
Well, after reading more just about you and what you've done there and your career, now you started over 40 years ago. You started as a hot shot. and worked your way up through San Diego Fire Department. You became the chief there, and then took the job over here at Orange County. And tell us a little bit about that. What prompted you to leave San Diego? What was that situation like?
Yeah, that was a really tough decision. I spent nearly 30 years in San Diego after about 13 years with the hotshot organizations and, fighting fire all over the U.S. And I was happy in San Diego. I got appointed fire chief in 2015 and had a really great relationship with the mayor, the chief operating officer, the council, and we're accomplishing a bunch of things. And yeah, I never planned on leaving. It really had more to do with the challenge that was presented here in Orange County. The fire chief before me had suddenly resigned, and so there was a vacancy here. In San Diego, we serve about 1.4 million people through, I want to say at the time, about 55 stations. Orange County bigger, served 2 million people out of 78 stations with air operations and a lot of similarities. We had used our task force down in San Diego, had used our task force here, a larger wildland fire responsibility. We've got hand crews and bulldozers and things that we didn't have. And so, and there were some very big public issues, some of them, a couple of them very embarrassing, that I thought I could help them with. And so it took a little bit of coercing by the recruiting folks, because I definitely wasn't all in. It was like they kept mailing and emailing and I wouldn't return them. And it's not like me to not be responsive. So it was like, it was the holidays. It's like, man, I got to call this guy and just tell him, look, and my first thing is, look, thanks for calling, but I'm not interested. Thanks, but I'm not. I heard what happened up there. I want nothing to do with it. I'm happy here. And he just laughed and was a pretty good guy. He was the former longtime city manager in Anaheim. And he explained a little bit about what occurred up here that I was unaware of. And so I told him at the end of an hour and a half, I'm intrigued. I'm not in, but I'm intrigued. I go and talk to my wife. It's like, hey, I got this call and this is like, you need to take that job. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. We're here in San Diego. Come on. So over time, I was really interested in the challenges.
And so really the biggest part of it was, here's an organization I want to show kind of, right, self-challenge. I want to show what I can do. And here is an organization that, felt pretty confident about what you did in San Diego. That you probably felt San Diego was in good hands as well, correct? At that point?
No, they were good heads.
And so you started basically working at Orange County, and then last night I got an email from you. You said, hey, here's just a little background about what I'm trying to build. And I couldn't stop reading it about 2.5 hours. Now I read very slowly. I used to be a truck guy. Now I'm a lieutenant. So, I don't read very, very quickly. There's not a lot of pictures in this stuff. But the gist of this podcast is better every shift. And so I do a lot of self-help books, some, leadership related reading. And I'm reading, it's basically a manifesto, just a process of what your thoughts are and how you we're implementing them step by step. And it's nothing like I've ever seen in the fire service before. Where does all that come from? Where does that background for you and that, that education component on this come from?
I'll try to keep it as short as I can. We had a relationship, having come from the wildland fire service and the hotshot organizations and whatnot. Post South Canyon, the tragedy in 1994 where 14 firefighters were lost in Colorado, it really brought about a focus on leadership and leader development within, the federal wildland fire agencies. They developed, the L380s, 180s, 280s, all these other things. And when in San Diego, me still being very close with the Hotshot Association and others that served when I did and those after, was really fascinated by the cultural change that they were experiencing within the federal wildfire organizations. And they tested a lot of these courses with the smoke jumpers and with the hot shots, because if they embraced it, then likely others would. That was the right place to start. And I always kind of thought, it's like, man, we could be doing something like that with the municipal or structural type firefighting. So got together with Mission Centered Solutions out of Colorado, who developed those courses, and basically piloted a bunch of those in San Diego. And there was the same course, but they changed the pictures from guys throwing dirt to firefighters dragging hose and raising ladders and that sort of thing. But it's the same stuff, right? I mean, leader development is what it is. And it was like 60% experiential. So it was experience driven as opposed to just didactic or sitting in a classroom. And man, the folks loved it. They loved it, couldn't get enough of it. So much so that we made it part of the testing process, that you had to, the first level leader, first level supervisor piece, you had to take this to compete, for the captain's exam, and the next level for the battalion chief exam. So even those that went kicking and screaming, that don't like to be forced into training, usually came out and went, wow, that was probably some of the best I've ever had. And so we started focusing on more of a mission-driven culture. And I don't know, Aaron, maybe it's the same with you and your experience, but I know mine was early in the career was we were so rules and compliance based. If you don't do it this way, you can expect discipline or bad things will follow. And in our business, right? I mean, it's all about chaos and ambiguity, uncertainty, all of those things. And the last thing we want people to do is to be worried about consequences, when many times the right thing to do is right in front of them. If there's time compression, man, we don't have much time, and to delay could make things worse or even cause lives. And I've seen that play out time and time again, in a lot of organizations. A little story I like to tell, and really what kind of focused on me, in San Diego, we had a policy that was, hey, if you're sent to a response, doesn't matter what happens when you're on the way to the response, you do not divert, you continue. Well, what if there's a car accident from you? Well, you drop a firefighter off or whatever, and you just continue. And I had a friend of mine, a couple of friends. One was studying to be a captain. The other was the captain on a very busy engine. In fact, Janelle, out where you worked at in Station 14 out in North Park. And so the story goes, it's midday and they're heading down to a medical aid down the 4-lane thoroughfare there, and they see just coming up big dark black smoke, people in the street waving them, hey, you got to go this way. And they're thinking, wow, this time of day, everything else looks like apartment buildings back there from what they could see. The captain made a decision to break policy and to make that left and perhaps go to this fire and maybe change the outcome. He says his heart sank when they turned the corner and made another turn. It was one of those big construction bins that was on fire. And so it looked really impressive, right, from where they were going. But he realized then his biggest, oh no, now I'm in trouble. Not anything else, right? And they'd sent somebody else to the medical aid. So the process went through and he got disciplined fairly severely. And it caused a bunch of discussion on the floor. I was still on the floor at the time. It was like, hey, man, that's not right. You tell us, you empower us, and you expect us as officers to make decisions based on what we see, taste, smell. But then, I do that. Now I get spanked and suspended or whatever the outcome was. And so we had a lot of discussion, and there were a number of examples like that, some big and small, and big fires. We had a couple of big fires in 2003 and 2007, wildfires that burned hundreds of homes and killed people and whatnot. And there were a lot of examples of, that strike team that was led very tightly by a strike team leader, right? That, you got this house, and versus a strike team leader that said, look, this is our block, do the best you can, gave really good leaders intent, and then laid back and was like, hey, I'm here for you. And in contrast, those that had the ability to work very autonomously and learning as they went, saved many more structures than the one that was very, you take this one. And so, when General McChrystal's book came out, Team of Teams, there's a big part in the front of it where he talks about, what they were experiencing in the early 2000s in Iraq with Al Qaeda and the missions they were going on. They weren't accomplishing a lot of missions, and Al Qaeda was, frankly, as he put it, kicking their butts pretty good. And what they had was Al Qaeda was a very decentralized organization. And McChrystal, who at the time was in charge of, I don't know what the military term is, but all the, the special teams, changed that so that, individuals that are actually going on the raids and doing whatever they were involved in the early planning and development. And they saw their missions increase, they saw success increase, and they call it mission command in the military. We call it mission-driven culture. So we enlisted the help of Mission-Centered Solutions in San Diego to kind of help us with this. I had the benefit of probably 10 or 12 years of the training and leader development in San Diego. So I came here, and it was very successful. I came here and thought, oh, this is going to be a focus to, to become, well, like anything else, every organization's got its own culture.
Every culture's different. Right? Yep.
And it was not going to be as easy a task, and really had to develop longer, in my mind, longer over time. And it's been about almost a 5-year journey to where you're getting, the leadership and those within the organization to buy in, because they get it. When you explain it like I did, people go, you sit around the kitchen table at the fire station, they go, man, that's awesome. They go, so wait a minute. So I make decisions based on what I see, time compression, and things go well. That's great. What happens when things don't go well? I've stepped out of policy and I'm outside of our deal. You got my back then, Chief? And the answer is yes. I mean, at one point in San Diego, when that question came up, we had to get attorneys in the room, to convince people that no, under, your job in an emergency, whatever it is, no, you're back. But, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing when it happens to demonstrate it. But what we had to share with them too is, listen, that doesn't mean they're in the level of accountability. I tell people, I expect you, and it blows their minds, I expect you to break rules when you need to. It's okay. Rules are good, and they're for a reason. But, if you're being hemmed in because of those rules and you're not willing to step outside, that's a problem for me. Yes, you're going to be asked, hey, talk me through what you were doing when you made that decision. And even if in the end, maybe it was not the best decision, at least, there was some mind before. Now, when you first put it out, right, of course, the workforce is like, oh man, I'm adding myself to every structure fire.
This is going to be chaos, right? Because I'm going rogue, because I can do it, right? That's a firefighter talking, right? A truck guy. Oh, we're going on everything. West side, we're going. East side, we're going. Yeah.
And we saw a little of that, right? It didn't take much to rein it and say, look, and then they would say, well, that's mission-driven culture. It's like, no. That's not what we're talking about.
That's you-driven culture. That's right. That's really, that's a selfish-driven culture.
Did you check the computer, see if you were actually closest, in the front of the rig? Well, no. It's like, and so you can kind of talk your way through it. But it really had to happen here internally, because I'm still the external chief, right? And it's one thing when you grow up in an organization for 30 years, I ran with mostly pirates. And so I had a good network of people that would tell me, hey, what's really going on, that I trusted, right? And here I didn't have that network. And it doesn't matter whether I'm here 10 years, 20 years, I'm still came from the outside. Mm-hmm. So getting buy-in, even though they liked what they heard, getting buy-in and understanding took took longer. And so we really tasked, at the division chief level to, review, work with MCS, and I'd come in or whatever, but this couldn't be my thing. This couldn't be, it's a fire chief. This is what we're getting. It wasn't never going to work. It had to be embraced, by those that not only manage and lead the organization, but those within the organization. And so you'll see in that document, there were a lot of different sessions we had, a lot of input. We ended up with something I like to think is pretty simple, is, we have a who we are document. This is who we are. These are our values. These are the principles that we all agree, say who we are as an organization. The harder part then is, this is how we make decisions. And, and it talks about accountability and some of those other things. But
Is that that's the OCF FAA way, correct?
yeah, that's the who we are, and then the doctrine, and it bounces from organizational to operational. The focus is more operational, but you can apply that if you're in payroll or you're in human. I mean, there's some things you're not really time compressed, and life and death probably isn't a big thing in payroll, right? Or in the fiscal side, right?
To someone it might be, though, right?
Someone
Hey, right? Yeah.
Agreed. Well, I shouldn't say payroll, right? Because payroll is. I mean, that's the one thing that
Well, yeah, right.
you better be on time with the paycheck. But it really is focused for those that are on the front lines. You know, you as a lieutenant and those things. I mean, we want you to be out there when it's in front of you, and not even at the officer level, but even at the firefighter level. If it's in front of you, it's obvious you know what you need to do, but it's outside, or it may. We can't have you worried about discipline or what happens. I expect you to take action. And if you don't, we may have more of a problem with you, because we're giving you license to make good decisions at whatever level of the organization you're in.
Right. And not to, you have policy. And I think that was one of the first things you said. Hey, we're going to have solid policy and guidelines. And those are one thing. But if we all have the same vision and the same, goal and understanding, like we all buy into the OCFA way, when a situation doesn't apply to a policy, right? Because we can't write policy for everything. You can't write guidelines for everything. It's just,
right.
But if we're all under the same framework and belief system, that's how you're empowering the organization, right? Like that's the whole idea behind this.
We've got to give them good intent, right? I mean, intent-based decision-making is what it's about. If we give good intent, and it's clear, we're giving many times task, purpose, end state, or even sometimes just end state at the end, that this is what I'm hoping it looks like. Go do it. Absent the intent, well, then you're going to have folks guessing, well, God, did they mean this? Did they mean that? It's like, no. So we're really trying to focus on, whether it's on the fire ground or whatever it is look, this is the intent. This is why. And I think it resonates with the younger firefighters. Some talk about all these generational issues, and it used to be the, Gen X and Z, whatever, right? I think people ought to be informed. They didn't come up when I did, where say you're seen, be heard. It's not up to you. I was raised in that culture, and it was just the way it was. Now people want to know more, and I think it's okay. I mean, there's times, obviously, if you're in the heat of battle, there's probably not a lot of time, but why not, share with everybody, what your thought process is, why. But we definitely want people not to be bound. We want to be an intent-based culture as opposed to rules or compliance-based. And firefighters do amazing things out there. You're on the front lines now, man.
Yeah, and I've had a chance to interview, so many of them in the past year also. And you're right. There's no problem with, and I believe most of us do want to know where we're going. Now, I don't have to agree with it,
right?
But at least if I know, and I think one of the things that has changed over the years, and I'm now been in the fire service for over 20 years, right? You used to be able to sit at the table, the older generation, they could tell a story and they could inflame it as much as they wanted. Now you got someone in the corner with a cell phone going, no, that didn't happen that way, right? Here's pictures and here's what they said, right? So people can find out information so quickly. So why not just give it to them right from the source? And in your case, you made them part of the process, correct?
Yeah. And it's pretty hard not to, I don't get a lot of feedback, whether it was in San Diego or here, and hey, we disagree with this. Now, there are those that it makes really uncomfortable, and those are generally the rules followers, right? I mean, how many times have you had people say, look, Chief, Chief, I'm your best, I'm a rules follower. I'm your best employee. It's like, man, I don't want rules followers. I mean, first I say that, right, to kind of blow their minds a little bit, right? Because it does, like, why, wait a minute, the chief don't like rules. Then I kind of refocus, look, rules are important, but I don't want you to be a rules follower should something. But people get I found, and maybe you have too, get very comfortable within the rule set. If I just follow the rules and do not deviate for any reason, man, I'm good. And generally speaking, that's probably true. But in our business our business isn't perfectly set up like that. We live in a world of chaos, uncertainty, all those things. And to your point, there isn't a rule for all that. There isn't a policy for all that. And so, but it does make those types of people very uncomfortable.
So you started policy and SOGs, created this OCFA way. And the other part about this is you did it in a California way. I'm going to say Hollywood kind of way, because you added videos of, your chiefs. You added videos of members of the organization and what it meant to them and how it really should be laid out or, interpreted, and all the way down to the field. And I thought that was brilliant, because now you can kind of see everyone else's kind of not interpretation of it, but how they really feel about it. And, you added some nice videos, interviewed, and had this as part of a step process. So you had the OCFA way. What's the second part then that and I think, is that where you're in right now, is the second part?
Yeah, it's really the second phase. The first phase, the OCFA way, in fairness, I kind of inherited that. It was called the Orange County way. And when I became the chief here, the interim chief gave me a folder. And so the weekend, or a folder, a binder. So the weekend before I started, he had like my whole first month lined out. And Janelle's smiling, but she knows me. I'm kind of a chaos ADD. Man, I'm just like all over the map. I'm not organized like that. And in it, though, in the fold was this tattered Orange County. I'm reading this thing. It's like, wow, this is an amazing document. It talks about, who the organization was. And so I called him that weekend. And I says, man, what is this? You left it in there. He goes, well, the chief back then, Chip Prather, who was the chief here for 10 years, I think through 2007, maybe. Anyways, he was close with Bruno, and he spent time with Chief Brunacini in Phoenix. They all knew each other, Metro Chiefs or whatever, and he spent some time there and largely took what he learned and adopted out of Phoenix, because Phoenix has a similar document. It's probably called the Phoenix Way, right? And so plagiarization is something I think the fire service is very good at. We take great pride in. No better compliment. And so
why recreate the wheel in some cases? Yep.
And so he developed it here with stakeholders. And so it needed a refresh, was kind of our because it dove into not just who we are, but kind of how we do things. And it was a little bit, which isn't surprising for 2007-ish or mid 2000. So we really kind of refined it, brought in stakeholders, both on the professional staff, firefighters at all levels, to really make this theirs. Because I'm not going to tell them who the OCF. I mean, they have to tell us, what our values are, our principles, how we aligned, how we hold each other accountable for them. But the big missing piece was, okay, you got that. What about, our operational doctrine or philosophy, for lack of a better word? So this is kind of the culmination of that. Now the next phase, we believe, is training to that, or providing opportunities, whether it be, staff rides, other opportunities to really get people to start thinking about, and station visits. I mean, nothing replaces a station visit. I mean, I came from a time where, man, if we never saw the fire chief, that was okay, right? Fire chief's coming by, it's like, oh man, why? Did somebody do something wrong?
Yeah,
or
right.
Whatever,
Yep.
Right? Didn't want to see. The only time the chief showed up were multi-alarm fires, and the next day it was, yeah, somebody saw you without gloves on, or you didn't have the right PPE. And it's like, well, why do these people even show up if they're just going to show up, and then a day later, firefighters are dealing with complaints, the chief officers, the executive staff. And so, but it's changed. Man, people want to see us. It blows my mind. People want to see us and talk with us and ask us questions. And man, they'll tell you what's working, and they'll tell you mostly what's not working if you let them. And those are the things I want to hear. And if you're not, I tell the people upstairs here on the floor that if you think you know what's going on out in the floor ranks, you don't. You want to know, you need to go out there and talk with them. I mean, Aaron, how many times have something come from the top and you get it and you go, well, this is nice, but this isn't what we need? Because those at the top many times think they know what you need, and they're not always right. And so there's nothing that replaces a station visit when you can sit there and listen and share what's going on. Because firefighters, right? They're going to call their buddies next, and they're going to tell them next. And if you have, what I found, if you have a really strong point to make, you better say it at least 3 times, because by the time the rumor mill begins, a few places out. Anyway.
If you can write it down somewhere, that's even better. Because then if they can take a picture of it and pass the picture on, that's even that way. So as long as we don't have to say anything, right? Because we misconstrue stories, we misconstrue situations, all the time. But you're right. I think times have really changed where you want that chief to understand what you're going through now, and and it happens where sometimes a program is trying to be implemented, and you're like, Chief, you tell me, if you're in my shoes, how is this going to happen? And sometimes there's that disconnect, but yeah, being present more within the field and the stations is a I think a huge part of that, huge step, right? And that's kind of what you found, and that's what you preach there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about those folks at the tip of the spear. And I was meeting with one of my directors this morning. I got 25 directors. That's my governance. I got a board of 25, so not any less complicated there. But it's a great relationship I have with them, and so I meet with them pretty regularly. And we were talking about just that the need to meet with people and to really listen to them, and that things are very different than when I was on the floor. And I mean, the behavioral health and the mental health and all that is real. And if we're not out there listening to the troops and really trying to take some of our best ideas, I swear, come from the field. They know what they need. And,
we just have a bad way of packaging them and expressing that sometimes, right? I mean,
and some of the, but an organization of this size, so many layers, like, you got the engineer, you got a captain, you got a battalion chief, you got a division chief, an assistant chief, a deputy chief. I mean, oh my God, by the time, and they're all trying to filter, not filter to keep information away from me, but, what do you think the chief needs to know? And so when I go out there and hear some of this, it's like, man, that is genius. That is good stuff. And then I start asking, hey, where are we to this? Many times they haven't heard it, but there's just so many filters. I'm not saying they intentionally filter information out, but if you're not out there listening, in so many ways, this organization is very advanced. In other ways, not so much.
Yeah, I think every organization has that challenge, right? And some things we do great. We're actually showing, for those that are watching in video, we're showing a website you developed about, and this is to help educate all your members. Doesn't matter just if they're leadership, but there's, take me through this website a little bit. What was the idea behind it?
Well, it was suggested to me that a website be built, right? So we've got some very talented individuals on the job, not just firefighters, but professional staff. And they were a big part of all of this. And so I was as blown away as you are, Aaron. I mean, I knew they were doing this, and I'd seen a little bit over time they were showing us, but when they, presented this, I was floored, man. I'm like, wow.
This is pretty slick. I think this is what Aaron meant by the Hollywood treatment, right? It's a really slick website. It's ocfatraining.org/leadership for those who are just listening here. But yeah, take us through it.
Yeah, it was, because originally we were I probably got them here too. We had, originally came out with, there's the OCF FAA way. This is the tattered version. And then we ended up with booklets. And I'm like, well, this is awesome. Let's get the booklets out to everybody, or make them, we'll make them electronic. And these guys, the young folks are like, Chief, we can do better than that. It's like, all right, go for it. Do whatever you want. You just turn them loose. And I think that's another great example. You turn folks loose, and it's amazing what they'll do. I mean, if you look at the video, the starts with the division chiefs and others out there. I'm not in that thing.
No,
and that's purposeful. They didn't ask, which was fine. I would have said no, but I mean, they have to own this, because this can't be Chief Fennessy's thing. This has to be their thing. And if it lasts, and it should last beyond me, should there be opportunities maybe for it to be changed or edited, amended, because it's a living document? Probably. But when you get into it, I mean, these are leadership concepts that aren't new, right? I mean, they're maybe newly exposed to some of the fire service, but the mission-driven culture thing gets a lot of attention because, I won't say a lot of chiefs, but not everybody sees things exactly that way. And I think it goes back to that rules/compliance-based culture that these paramilitary organizations live within. I'm safe if I stay within these rules.
Right.
I'm saying you're not. I'm saying you're failing us if you continue to manage within those rules. We need to let our people, and when I say leaders, I mean everybody from a firefighter on the floor to operator, man, make decisions best you can. But the folks out on the field, man, they're the ones seeing it, tasting it, smelling it. We're not there, and maybe it's not the way but we weren't there, and they are, and we need to back them, and because people, there's no question in my mind, people will die or be hurt, if people don't make decisions that need to be made because they're concerned of the consequences associated with those.
Do you make all your members, are they required to do any particular courses on this through this website, or what's the requirement for them?
No, I think exposure is probably the best thing. Some folks will get in there and they'll see something, they'll tell, but hey, look at this, and then it will drive some conversation. What we've done though is we've added, at least for, I think, the division chief and battalion chief testing processes, we've told them that, hey, there may be a few questions in there.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. You just studied for lieutenant and made it, right?
Yep. I'm watching every single thing on there. It's
And,
brilliant. Oh yeah.
As firefighters, right? I mean, I tested, right? I mean, you're never more knowledgeable than when you're testing for a promotion or something else, right? So if I know it might be in there, I got to watch it. And the reality is they might find something in there. They go, ooh, I'm glad I did that, because, man, this is actually pretty good. I mean, I'm the same way, right? I wasn't big into volunteering when I was new on the job, and another firefighter said, hey, let's go down to this Christmas build a bike thing the union's sponsoring. They got pizza and beer. So, man, I'm like all in. So I'm down there and we're assembling bikes for kids, right? And kids are there, and I thought, wow, this is really cool, man. But if I hadn't have been drugged by a buddy to go to that with him, because largely there was pizza and beer, I might not have gotten that experience of volunteering that felt so good, which caused then me to, get involved with other things. So I see this the same way. If somebody opens this because they think they're bummed because it's one more thing to test for, but they stumble across something that maybe, helps them not only their work, but maybe in their personal lives or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I love it. I see, you saw General McCraven was in there. I thought you had some Simon Kinnick in there. You had a lot of the leadership books outside of the fire service. And I think sometimes in the fire service, we're reluctant. They don't understand, we're the fire service. They don't understand, leadership, the way that we need to imply it. And I think we got to get over ourselves, because like you had said, look, this came from wildland. Some of it came from the military. Some of it came from things that you've experienced and read, right? We're all people. We're all trying to create a culture of, as what you called, mission driven. So is a company, so is a business, so is a sports organization. I have some good friends that are, coaches all the way up to the professional level. And when you talk about creating a culture, right, they have a playbook. We have an SOG, but if the play doesn't go the right way, training comes into it, right? And you practice for those things. And it's really, refreshing just to read all your doctrine, because it's going kind of through that. You're like, here's the process. Here's where we're at. Here's where I need your buy-in. And by the way, this isn't me. This is the people that have been here for all these years. Snicker. Like I'm right. Like, and so I was super excited just to talk to you just about, this side of stuff, and how, you know, it's just enlightening to see. When you started going through this, right? Like, talk about your own personal development through this a little bit. When you first started, you know, you started with the wildland, and then as you started to see, you said, like, guys are eating this stuff up. Like, you know, take us through your own journey then. Did you just start, did that implore you to dig in more?
No, you know what, man, I stumbled across it, right? I mean, and even the fire service, I kind of stumbled across. I hear all these stories, right? I do new hire interviews, why the fire, and I hear some amazing stories, you know, about people who had an experience when they were young or whatever. It's like, man, that wasn't my experience. I just kind of got lucky, right? I didn't do well in school as, you know, I played sports, and that kind of got me through high school. Went to, you know, really large high school in the LA area and played football, and that kind of got me through. But at the end of high school, man, I didn't have anything going for me. I was, you know, I had 5 or 4 other brothers, and I was kind of the black sheep. Was in a little bit of trouble with the law, nothing major, but my dad was old school, you know, Navy, you know, World War II, Korea, and say, man, you know, you're either going to school or you're working or you're finding another place to live. You're not living here, and I'm charging you rent. It's like, what do you mean you charge me rent? And he wasn't lying, man. And so 18 came around, got out of high school. He says, so, you know, school's not really, sound like really an option for you, you know? And so I was down at the unemployment office in Pasadena, and was approached by somebody there, said, hey, what do you think about being a firefighter? I said, man, I never really thought about it. I had a couple uncles who were firefighters. But he said, go to Oak Grove Ranger Station on Monday. They'll issue you some boots. They'll put you through training. And so I ended up on this hotshot crew, you know, out of the Oak Grove Hotshots. And man, I'd never really been out of the LA area, and we were going to fires throughout the West. And man, I loved it. It was hard work, you know, obviously. And my aspiration then in life was, I didn't want to swing that Pulaski. I want to run that chainsaw. That to me was like, man, that is my life's goal. I want to run that chainsaw. I want the noise.
From burgers to fries, man, is
right?
What I'm trying to do, right?
So, man, I got to do that. And it was like, hey, I got to be a squad boss. And then, I mean, I can look back at it. I was 24 years old, and somebody saw something in me I didn't. And I went to work on those Potters, or actually became a hotshot crew foreman. Now they call them captains. We were foremen back then. I was 24 years old, and I've got a crew of 10. You know, there's 20 person hotshot crew, but I had one of the modules. And I remember kind of where I'm going with this is kind of my leadership epiphany was, you know, growing up in a yelling, screaming, cussing, you know, physical, this is what you'll do. I mean, that was how I led. You know, I yelled at my team and kicked them in the butt, and they responded to that. But I couldn't figure out why they didn't want to drink beer, you know, at the end of the day, why, you know, it wasn't. And so there I was, somewhere on the forks of the Salmon River, and I'm lining out my crew. I'm telling them whatever, I'm yelling and telling you willed and blah, blah, blah. And they went off to go do their thing, and I could hear a little whistle, and there's one of the old hotshot superintendents was up on the hill who must have been watching this whole thing. And he waved me up. And this guy was the guy that, man, if he said hi to you in fire camp, man, that was a big deal. Right? I was like, oh, man, this, you know, God, he knew my name, right? Or he waved at me or whatever. So he waved me up, had me sit down. And
this was like Chief Fennessy to me 8 years ago, by the way, or 10 years ago. You knew my name and took me under your wing. I'm not kidding you. I'm right there with you in this story.
This guy did this, right? And he suggested to me that there was a different way of getting people to do what you'd like them to do. And I thought at the time, man, this guy's crazy, man. They were smart. I told him, well, I think there was no, he asked me, how do you think that went? I said, no, I thought it went okay. I said, they're out doing the thing. And that's when he suggested. And he pulled this book out of his pack. It was The Art of War, Sun Tzu, Art of War. And he said, well, I'm going to see you later. Someone's on fire, and we're going to talk about, you know, this book. And I was like, oh my God, not only do I get to sit with this guy, but he gave me a freaking book, right? I'm going to read. And now I'm really freaking nervous, right? I don't know if you've read The Art. You probably have, Sun Tzu. That is not like an easy read. And when you're like 20, it's like, what the hell is this, right? And he's going to test me on it. He's going to ask me. And so I did see him later, and he did, you know, most of the talking. But he introduced me to others, and then I ended up working for a superintendent that was very big on leadership, but and really just became a leadership. I was just hungry for it, right? Ended up on the NWC, just same superintendent, retired, went to work for local government for a little while, and then he invited me to the NWCG Leadership Committee, which was all the federal agencies, the state, and he was the local rep. And I thought he was inviting me, typical of him, thought he was inviting me just to check it out. Well, he was checking out on his way out, and all of a sudden I'm like the guy, right? And so now I'm surrounded by people that just, are doing this for the agencies. And man, I still have a thirst for it, like you do. I find myself reading now a lot of stuff about, human behavior and some of those things. Why do people do what they do, and how do they react? And I just have a fascination or curiosity for it. I'll end with this. As I was, preparing for this and looking at some of the former podcasts, I forget who it was, but the question was, hey, do you think leaders are made, or do you think they, are natural in this and that? I don't know. I can't even remember what the answer was for the other guy, but I think they can be made. I'm an example of somebody that was really a very poor leader. And I don't know that I'm the best leader today, but I know I try really hard. And I mean, every day, I talk to myself through a lot of self-reflection and, how can I do better? I still try really, really hard. I don't know that any of us ever get there. Okay, I'm there now. I don't know that that's possible, but man, I'm trying really hard, and I don't get it right every time. But if I find myself getting angry or whatever, it doesn't happen very often. I ask myself, well, why? Is it my ego? And generally it is, right? Is it my ego that's banging on me? Is it my insecurity of something? Is it how dare they challenge me because I'm the fire chief? That would be the worst, right? I mean, no.
It's usually one of those three things, isn't it?
Right.
That's 99% of it. Ego. Yeah.
Insecurity. The more insecure somebody is, the bigger ego they've got, is what I found. Or they lead very heavy-handed because there's some insecurities there. But I had to kind of learn that. So if nothing else, I do a lot of self-reflection that way, especially if I find my heart beating or something goes, why is this? What about this is causing me this reaction? But anyways, I
love it.
Digress.
No, that's so great. You mentioned, well, there's quite an evolution for one. That's amazing. And I think that self-reflection is so critical in that. But you mentioned earlier, and I think it connects in with what you were just telling the story about, how you were disciplining and, oh, how do you think that went? Here's the art of war. I'm seeing these connections because you called yourself an outside chief earlier when you were coming into Orange County, right? Now, in the Fire Chief of the Year Award nomination, one of the quotes says, I'm going to embarrass you for a second here. Chief Fennessy's leadership has been so impactful, it is now baked into OCFA's DNA. So to be an outside chief coming in, and then also just thinking back to your previous story, how do you find that way to build that trust with these people? I mean, being baked into the DNA, that's a pretty powerful statement. How do you achieve that?
Yeah, in full transparency, I don't remember that being said, because a lot of that stuff I just kind of ducked my head anyways, right? It's like, well, the reality is this, is that I don't know if it's true or if it's not. And to me, legacy is not important. I talk to a lot of chiefs who are getting close to retirement or whatever, and they talk about their legacy. And I get really uncomfortable. It's like, legacy? What the hell is that? I don't need a legacy. I mean, you go to work, you do the things you can for your people and try to make the organization and the service good. The legacy, I don't need or want some stinking legacy. And I also realize, though, that too, right, in these positions, especially more and more today, you're a hero 1 minute, right? But one bad thing come up, and it doesn't even have to be the fire chief or something. It can be somebody else, and then you're not. So I guess I'm flattered, obviously, that would be said. And I'm not discounting the fact that whoever said it genuinely meant it. But I don't know. I mean, who is baked into the frickin' I don't know, maybe 10 years from now, they look back and go, yeah, no, he was okay. Like I look back at Chip Prather's a friend of mine to this day. I was introduced to him way back then when I think I was a captain. And he and I get together sometimes for lunch, a few times a year. And I mean, I just admire the heck out of the guy. Very soft spoken, but man, just an amazing leader. 10 years from now, they look back or people are here that weren't here and go, hey man, that guy Fennessy, he was okay. He took care of us. Man, that would be success for me. Because you know what? You're not going to win the favor of everybody no matter what. I mean, I didn't know the fire chiefs early on in San Diego. I knew a lot of guys didn't like him, but I didn't know enough to like or dislike, right? I mean, and some people will just dislike whoever the fire chief is, even if they've never met him. It's just, human nature. So
I think you might not go into it with the exact intent to have your vision, quote, baked into the DNA, because that's such a specific thing.
right.
But I think the step before that is probably top of mind throughout your career, which is building trust. So maybe that's the better way to reframe it, is
like
how
that.
do you build trust as an outsider?
I like that. I mean, I totally, and that's the whole business, right? That's it. And we firefighters, we can sniff out a fraud in a heart. Well, sometimes not in a heartbeat, most of the time in a heartbeat, but a fraud will show themselves at some point and we'll go, I knew it. I knew it. Right. And so we're just like that.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to think we knew it I knew it the whole time.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
And so what I tell people, man, if you're not, don't say it or don't be it if you're not really it. You better be honest and transparent. If you love the organization, if you're passionate about that, you can only fake it so long, especially as the fire chief, man. You are always in the spotlight and you will have a moment of weakness if you don't really believe you, if you let your guard down and people will see it. So you really have to, be someone that is, trustworthy, that is going to tell the truth, that is transparent. And I'm not going to tell you that I was always that way. I wasn't the case. Like I said, I ran with a lot of pirates back in the day. And we had a lot of fun that probably would have got me fired today had I been in it, right? But there's never a reason to be dishonest in the fire service. We are such, I think, generous people that will give folks the benefit of the doubt. I mean, there's never a reason to lie. We all screw up, right? From the fire chief all the way down, and just acknowledging it and acknowledging to be better. And sometimes it comes with discipline, sometimes even worse, right? But the fire service is so forgiving that way. If you want to build trust, you better walk the walk, and you better. My plan for coming here being an external chief was, I'm going to visit 100 stations in my first 100 days for dinner, lunch, whatever. I didn't get that far. I knew the work would eventually catch up with me where that probably wouldn't be possible. But I bet I made close to 70 visits. And if you want to know what's going on in an organization, like I said earlier, you go visit a fire station. If you do that, themes start to line up, themes and reputations of people, and you start to really get a sense of who that organization was. And I think that was key for me. And I learned so much in those visits that I'd come back here and go, hey, I'm hearing there's a theme out there. I'm hearing, is this true? And many times, like, yeah, that's true. It's like, well, we need to fix that. I mean, I won't get into details because this is a great organization and one that always has had a great reputation. I applied for it back in like 1980, stood in line. I was still very much wanting to be, in the hotshot organization. Really wasn't interested in, but I went with everybody else and took the test. And so when I got here, I said, look, I failed to get in 40 years ago, but I got in the other way this time. But great reputation. But like with any organization, once you get into it, there's strengths and weaknesses, and there still are. I mean, we still have challenges internally, things we want to do or should be better at. But I don't know. I appreciate that, Janelle. But trust is everything. And if you lose it, then you likely aren't getting it back.
Chief, I love the fact that you're so humble with this too, and I met you 10 years ago and you kind of, took the time to talk to me and be that kind of person as that old salty vet was to you. And I appreciate that. And you have a vision, obviously, to build trust, to empower your employees, to educate them. So what's next for you? What's next for the organization?
I don't know, and I appreciate that. You're another one, Aaron, that loves the fire service. It's hard, I get it all the time now, right? Because I've been 45 years in the fire service, and I think it'd be nice to do 50, but I don't know. My biggest concern is I'm preparing others to replace me, right? And so I don't want to overstay, have them prepared, and then be that person that stays longer, and then they end up being chief somewhere else or retiring. And so I'm trying to balance that out a little bit as well. I think, pretty engaged nationally and statewide. And I think nationally, I've got to develop a pretty good relationship, or a very good relationship, with our current U.S. Fire Administrator, Dr. Lori Moore Merrill. And I believe very strongly in what she's doing. And she's on fire. I mean, she's accomplished so much in just a couple of years she's been the fire administrator. And I asked her one night, over dinner, in a group, I said, so what do you do for work-life balance? Because I know mine is out of whack. I don't have it. I tell people, do not use me as the example. Bad example. I'm lucky I've got a wife that tolerates my madness, but I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. And she says, I don't have work-life balance. It's all work. I mean, she was like, they hired me to do this, and I'm going to do this and this, and my husband knows this, and I was like, damn, wow. And she is. So there's things like we're working through is things like ESF4, where the Forest Service and others manage the movement of fire. Under the national framework, the Forest Service is the emergency support function federal lead for that. Well, I think they do a great job of moving wildland resources and green resources, but they don't do a very good job with the red stuff, with hazmat, with all those others. And the fire administration is the co-lead. So getting them to, she's, working towards getting them to be, part of that co-lead, because we're missing the boat, not just for wildfire, but we have the big earthquakes out here. We're going to need the other half of the country's help. If we don't have a system in place, and EMAC is not that system, and some of the others. So big things like that. Statewide, EMS is a big issue. Internally, we're focused on, ambulance transportation, not necessarily being the ambulance provider, but partnering perhaps, but improving ambulance response time. They're having challenges with EMTs. I mean, all these things are big and complex. The wildfire issue, not just here, but throughout the West, it's a big issue. And so, President Biden's commission's about to publish their report next week. We've got some insight into that, and how we then work locally with our state legislators and in DC to get more emphasis on some of the climate change stuff. So, but man, I love this stuff. That's the thing. That's why it's so hard to think about retirement, Aaron, is, man, I don't know. I love doing the stuff we're doing, and I love the people that, around me. I love these conversations we have. And so I'm in no hurry to hang it up. I'll just say that.
Well, that's good, because we're going to want you to be on for a couple more podcasts, I think, down the road. And I think you're about ready to explode, especially if we can share. Do you mind if we share this doctrine?
No. Okay. Feel free. I mean, that's for, and if anybody has questions, they can contact me direct. You can give my email and I've got business cards that got my email and cell phone on them. People think that's nuts. It's like, well, no, I will answer you. I'm one of those people that, may not be that day, but within a few days, you will get a response.
Yep. I can attest to that, right away. I mean, you were the big chief in San Diego, and I was this little guy in the corner, and you actually took me on a tour of your entire facility, your training facility, answered questions. And, we had a day, we took a whole day and did it. And so I will verify that. And, so I think you're about ready to explode here when people start to look at this. I had probably 15 people that I was ready to send that to, and I'm glad that you are sharing that work. And thank you for doing that work. And thank you for having the foresight to do that. And, I think the big thing is a lot of us feel that same way, but you're able to put it in paper.
That was hard.
And then transfer it with a little California flair to video and a great website. And I do believe a lot of people we'll use that as a template for the fire service. And, it will leave a lasting impression. I'm just telling you that now, because I'm going to use it for as long as I'm in, because it was that good. Again, congrats on the award. I think a lot of people, after they read that and listen to this, will be on board Team Fennessy. And, if you decide to run for office, which I think we could probably, put you through here next after you, I think you're going to have some supporters, hopefully after this. But you're not done yet. We got a couple of things for you. We're going to find the other side of Chief, kind of the lighter side. We do things, we like to put people in the hot seat. And a lot of the questions come from previous guests. Janelle's mom, who is a big supporter of the show, also comes up with great questions, especially since you're, from San Diego. I think Janelle's got a couple for you.
Awesome.
All right. I want to know, of course, selfishly, being still in San Diego, I want to know what you miss about San Diego, specifically, like maybe like a specific burrito shop or like, something in particular where like when you're back in town, you're like, oh, I got to go to that spot or do that thing.
I do. There's a couple places, the Cass Street Bar and Grill in Pacific Beach. It's been a long time since I've been there. I don't know if they've been there. They made the best Chinese chicken or fish Oriental fish salad or chicken salad. Amazing. And then there's a place, I love Mexican. I could have Mexican food every day and be okay. And I just love Mexican. There's a place, I don't know if it's still there. I think it was called Roses, but it was right next to the Bales Bonds company, right down by the trolley downtown. This little shop. And man, they had the best freaking Mexican food. I'll find out if it's still there. I'll send it to you.
Please do.
I love San Diego. I wasn't from San Diego before. I was born and raised in the LA area. And when I took the job down there, I didn't know anything about San Diego. But man, it really is a great city to live in or to be around. It's got its issues now. Homelessness, of course, is a big one down there. But everybody's being challenged with that, even here in Orange County, not nearly like they are in San Diego. Everybody will tell you this, but it's true. It's the people. I run into my firefighters, and I still call them my firefighters from San Diego. And then I get good big hugs. I'm a Padres fan, like it or not. I'm still with them. Disappointed this year, but whatever. But I go to the game, and guys will come up. Hey, Chief, good to see you. And man, I don't know if it's age or what. I can't always remember their names, right? I get a big hug, and we miss you, and that makes me feel good. They've got a good chief, and the organization's great. But I didn't ever plan on leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, I never, ever in my wildest dreams thought I would leave that place, and so I do miss the people down there. It's a wonderful city.
San Diego misses you. Collectively, we all miss you.
Well,
come visit. Come back. Come visit.
I did you'll love this. So the 9/11, just happened. And so KUSI, the folks at KUSI, the local San Diego station, Tommy Sablon, remember little Tommy he's one of the producers. Really. He and I are very close friends. We used to, when I was down there, visit juvenile hall and talk to the kids, and I'd share my story. I only gave you a glimpse of it here, but my story with them, and that they could too, be firefighters and blah, 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 those that could. And anyways, he's a producer there. He calls me every 9/11, hey, can you be on the show? And so that morning I do a live piece, for the San Diego News. And I get all my San Diego guys are texting me. He's like, dude, what are you doing on our news?
Oh, that's hilarious.
He's still got a foot in that community. That's great.
Yeah. I love the community. Thanks,
Chief. You mentioned the Padres. I want to ask, what other hobby do you have outside of the fire service?
Sadly, I don't have a lot because it does consume so much, which is a concern. As we're talking about, I'm getting close to retirement. To me, that causes a little anxiety. But man, I love, I've got the MLB channel, so I don't miss like a game, right, of the Padres. And I watch other games, and I'm a big NFL guy. And I've got the NFL package, so man, I'm on Red Zone. I'm watching. I'm a Raider fan. All right, don't beat me up, but lifelong Raider fan. My kids are all grown now, and they're doing well. I used to love to go to their games and those sorts of things. But that's probably a piece that, we talk a lot about behavioral health and what happens in retirement. We see a lot of retirees. I know you do too, Aaron, that some do very well in retirement, some don't. That's a concern I have for myself because, man, I've put it all into the fire service. And others are like, well, you can go consult or you can go do this. I don't know if I want to do any of that, maybe, but doing nothing, man, I don't know that's going to be good for me either. So I don't golf. I don't drink, so hanging at the bar is probably not something I'm going to be doing much of. So I don't know, but that's something that, quite frankly, I've got to be attentive to. These jobs require a lot of sacrifice, and I sacrificed a lot of family time along the way that I do have some regrets about, to be fully, honest. But I'm happy. Right. I mean, I'm not unhappy and while my work-life balance is completely out of whack, it always has been, but it's better than other things that I don't know. I'm happy.
Something tells me you're not going to do nothing. I don't
know that I
think
can.
I don't think you know how to do that. So
I don't think I can.
Yeah, but that's gonna. I'm gonna ask you this question a couple of years from now on the podcast, and you're gonna have a couple of them. That's a goal for you.
Thanks.
You're also going to be writing more regularly. For me, that'll be what you do, right?
Whenever you ask, you've always come through. You're one of those people I can't say no to.
I always got to work in my writing pitch, right? Well, this kind of connects too. I was curious, you live in Paradise. So where do you like to go when you go on vacation for those times you actually can get away with the family? What's your favorite vacation spot?
I don't do many vacations. I plan them but don't do them. But I'm actually leaving in November to go to Kauai.
Oh, very nice.
I'm not going to places really to be a tourist as much as just to kind of do nothing, maybe, right? And sleep and walk. And you're right. I mean, I live in San Clemente and nothing, super big or anything like that. But I love it there, right? I figured when I retired, I'd probably move back to North San Diego County, Carlsbad or something like that. We're thinking about staying. San Clemente, I mean, I'm 5 doors from Camp Pendleton, the border. So I'm about as close to San Diego County line as you can get.
Yeah.
But I love the pace of the city. It's kind of I don't surf, but it's a surf city, and there's lots of places to eat and hike, and it's just beautiful. But I try to take a couple weeks a year. I'm not always successful. Again, it's that work-life balance. It's a little out of sorts. But now that my kids are gone, I got dogs, and trust me, man, who's going to watch the dogs? Yeah. And we can board. We're not boarding the dogs, and so. I take it while I can. If I've got a longer weekend, maybe we go out to Palm Springs or we do something, but I don't feel like I'm lacking. But I like, just being, I've never been to Kauai, but I think that'll be nice because there's not a lot to do there, I'm told, but it's beautiful, I'm told. So we'll see. But those are the kind of things that I think I'd like to travel. I think so. I don't know, more to follow, I guess.
All right, Chief, we got one more question for you. More of a serious one, but it relates back to the show. Better every shift. Obviously you've given us a lot of nuggets on how to improve organizations, how to, be better leaders. How are you personally working to get better?
I think largely it's being out and interfacing not just with our firefighters here, but looking outside the organization. And we laughed about plagiarism, but man, there's a lot of good stuff that others are doing, and not just metro agencies. I mean, even small agencies and organizations. So I found myself on a lot of different committees and boards, not all that take a lot of time or travel or anything, but to exchange information, not just with other fire chiefs either, but others. And I'll give you a short example. We've been sending our strike teams out on fires for 14 days to 21-day assignments, whatever, not inclusive of travel. Well, recently found out that Ventura County and others are now shifting to more of a 7-day. it's a lot of logistics if you've ever done that, moving 20 people up and down the road, leaving the apparatus in place, but exchanging people. And the agreements we have allow for that. But we think that, whether it's new generation or not, people want their time off more. And if people know they're going to be gone for 14 to 16 days, when you talk about travel, and that's tough on relationships now. That's tough on families. And so if we can limit that, to something more palpable, I think we're going to relieve some of the stress on the firefighters. And so I use that as an example because if we're going to get better, if I'm going to get better, man, I want to hear what others are doing in terms of making it better for their firefighters. I'm on a weekly call, started several years ago, half hour early morning with the LA City, LA County, Ventura County fire chiefs. We don't even know what we're talking about, but half hour we come in and we've exchanged information. We've done a lot of different things together. Personally, I still like to read, and I try. It's harder now than it ever has been, but I'm finding that gap that I don't have for reading. There's so much stuff, whether it be on TED or YouTube or things that get sent to me, right? That maybe is a 12-minute video that causes me to think. You mentioned Simon Sinek and some of the others. I mean, a lot of us, yourself included, are very familiar with that. A lot of people aren't. But Billy Goldfeder has turned me on to a number of different things, or he'll send a link. And so I think just continuing personal growth that way, as well as organizational growth by looking over the fence. It sounds kind of obvious, but man, there's a lot of fire departments that don't look over the fence, and they believe that they're doing it better than anybody else. So why do I, or for whatever reason. That's the way this organization was for a while. Now I've got all my people, looking over. They're engaged in fire scope, and they're in these committees, and they're building their own networks of fire service and professional, agency people. So I don't know, a lot of it, Aaron, I don't give it a lot of thought. I don't know that it's just natural or anything like that, but it's that thirst, right? I'm interested in what you're doing. I'm interested in what Janelle's doing, not for selfish reasons, but because I'm just a curious person anyways.
Well, I think that's it. Really. I mean, it's the search. It's the thirst. As you said, looking over the fence for what other people are doing and how then you could adapt that to be better chief, be a better, leader, whatever it is. And I think that's an excellent summary. For probably what you stand for, what your organization stands for, is continually look around you. And, that's really what the podcast is about. And speaking of looking over the fence, if you are just listening to this podcast, you can actually watch us. You can watch Chief Fennessy. You can see, some of the website that he's developed. You can see us on the Fire Rescue One YouTube page. You can also see us on firerescue1.com. You can email us with any questions for Chief or for Janelle or for myself, suggestions, feedback. Let us know if we're on something or onto something. You can email us again at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. Please rate, review the show. Chief Fennessy, congratulations on your award. Congratulations on all the different things that you've accomplished with Orange County. Thank you for being the leader and the person you are. But most importantly, everyone, make sure you learn something, do something, and share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening.